Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I'm also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. I kind of said that muddled everyone, but Film Critics Association.
And my name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
Yeah, you are.
I am indeed.
Indubitably.
I'm
just cracking myself up over here.
Indubitably is a good word.
It is a good word. I love it. Well, in addition to talking about good words that we love, we're also going to be talking about movies like we do every week. And this week, we are talking about Jungle Cruise. We're talking about Fear Street Part 3, 1666, and 9 Days.
9 days!
Before we...
Sorry.
Yay, 9 days.
I had to break in with a little bit of defending your life there. Sorry, everyone.
And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Yeah. But before we kick things off, we just want to tell you about our weekly Patreon episode. This week, we talked about our poll winner. We do a monthly poll for our patrons. And the poll winner for our video game movies poll was Silent Hill. So if you're a patron, go check it out. And if you're not a patron, consider joining so you can get access to exclusive weekly content. Now, let's dig into the movies. And we're going to kick things off with 9 Days. And 9 Days is written and directed by Edson Oda. This premiered at Sundance last year, and it won a writing award. And it stars Winston Duke, Zazie Bates, Benedict Wong, Tony Hale, Bill Skarsgård. And it is about a person, Winston Duke, who is kind of a judge as far as new souls to be born. And so kind of very similar to the Disney film Soul. There are new souls that will pop up, and he interviews them over the course of 9 days to see if they are a candidate to be born into a body on Earth. And so that's what this film is about.
And then once they are, he's kind of keeping track of them on different TVs and making notes and kind of keeping tabs on them. And he's got like a bunch of TVs that he's watching all the time and taking notes on.
Exactly.
Right.
So what did you guys think of this?
I loved it.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Oh, good. I loved it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
this is my kind of movie.
I would say yeah. I was going to say it's not normally the kind of movie that I think you both know that I would go for. It's a little more cerebral, a little more
esoteric.
Esoteric, yes.
Thank you.
A little more deliberately paced than most movies that I tend to enjoy. This was taking its time, kind of unraveling the story, but I really dug it. I just thought it was a really fascinating premise that makes you think a lot, but also very emotional movie too, and really well acted all around, especially by Winston Duke, who I really like, and I love that he's been playing such diverse parts. And I mean, I loved him in Black Panther as M'Baku. I loved him in Us.
Oh God, he's great.
Father, and like those are three things I could think of are very different characters, but all extremely well acted.
Agreed.
Yeah, he's really wonderful, generally speaking, but also in this part.
Yeah, this is a part that requires a lot of emotional depth and range, and he definitely delivers on that.
Yeah, and a lot of just like actorly discipline, you know?
Yes. Yes. A lot of restraint, deliberate choices. I completely agree. Yeah. I'm so glad you talked about not only the cerebral elements of this, but also, and the existential elements, Evan, but because it is a very existential movie. But I also love that you talked about the emotion behind it, because this movie destroyed me. I was sobbing nearly uncontrollably for the second half of the film. And I mean, especially at certain scenes, like the beach scene and the bicycle scene. And so if you haven't seen the film, what the beach scene and the bicycle scene is when Winston Duke decides that a soul is not going to continue on, he asks them, what is a memory or a moment that you would like me to recreate? Because the potential lives, the potential souls, they've been watching the TV footage of people on Earth. So they've been experiencing vicariously people's lives. And the beach scene, there's a guy, I think Mike is his name, and he drew this gorgeous beach scene. And so he wants to experience the beach. And so there's sand and there's a video of the beach, and Winston Duke is there kind of moving water. So it's like a wave, and he has headphones in so he can hear the sound. And it's just this beautiful but gutting scene. And very similarly for another person, she wants to ride a bicycle, and it's the same thing. Like, she's on a bicycle that is stopped, so she's not really going anywhere, but the video footage makes it seem like she's moving, and there's falling petals from above, and it's beautiful, and just rendered me a sobbing mess.
Yeah, it's devastating, those scenes. They're beautiful but devastating. There's just a beauty that he as a character has recreated for these people so they can live in this rich moment before they cease to exist, which is just absolutely tragic.
Yeah.
When you find out his backstory is that he did live and he had a life. And Benedict Wong, who's kind of like his best friend, but also kind of a supervisory kind of presence, kind of, checking to make sure that he's making the right decisions. He says, you find out that Winston Duke's character, he lived his life and supposedly was very like sensitive being, and so he felt like he kind of got walked all over by life, and so he's trying to pick somebody who's like not going to get pushed around, which turns out it's Bill Skarsgård in a decidedly less creepy role than usual. His characters in the hypothetical, he's like, there's a kid that gets bullied on the TVs. He's like, I would fight those people. Or there's a really twisted hypothetical he gives them of like, you're at a concentration camp and there's a noose around your kid's neck, and the guard says you can either kick out the chair and kill your kid, or everyone else around you is going to die. And he's like, I would fight the guard. And no one else says that. So he's kind of got it in his mind that he's going to pick someone who's kind of like tough and won't kind of be pushed around. But is that really the best tactic?
Yeah.
It shouldn't necessarily be.
I was a little worried that Bill Skarsgård was going to be some kind of sociopath, but then he told that story about how he was horrified about that guy who, killed the two schoolgirls and buried them. And he's just like, I can't, it's just crazy. Like, I don't remember what exactly he says, but he says it's gross. He's like horrifying.
Yeah, disgusting, because they're talking about things that disgust them.
And it's like, okay, so he is normal to think that somebody murdering two school kids is horrifying. You should feel that way, at least. So
totally. But it is an interesting thing, because it does ultimately come down to him and Zazie Bates, and Winston Duke's character is really resisting her, even though she's so kind of intriguing, and she's really curious, and she's really, she's got a real empathy for people. And a lot of times she doesn't answer his questions, which really frustrates him, because she's like, well, I would need to have more information, or I would talk to them. And, and he's really frustrated because she's not doing the process the way he wants her to do it. And she's kind of doing it differently, which clearly shows that she's creative and has a sensitivity of her own. And it's Keo, Benedict Wong, who is like, no, she's special. You need to focus on her. You need to, give her a chance. And it is really interesting, this kind of notion of, Bill Skarsgård's character, who is like, nope, I would fight them, no, I wouldn't take any shit. And then, Zazie Bates's character, who's like, no, I would talk to them. And, it's a much more gentle, sensitive, empathetic approach. And yet she's ultimately not chosen. And it's very interesting.
Well, it's also interesting is she is more empathetic and more sensitive, but I also feel like she wouldn't probably get pushed around either. It's just that she's more open, if that's the right word. I don't know. Then, Bill Skarsgård, he seems to see things very clearly. Things are very binary to him. Whereas Emma is, she's just more, I think that she probably would punch a bully if it actually came to that. But first she was going to do everything she could to be like, hey, let's diffuse this situation. What's going on?
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. But it is kind of interesting thinking about you know, when Winston Duke was on Earth, you know, he was, quote, too sensitive. And so that is why he goes to the, you know, completely other side, that he doesn't want somebody to be too sensitive. And because he's so haunted by his kind of favorite person, Amanda, who ends up dying unexpectedly. And he needs to get to the bottom of, was this an accident? Was it suicide? And he's he's obsessed with her, and he's obsessed with finding out what happened, because he sees so much of himself in her. And, you know, which is really, really tragic too.
Yeah, it kind of made me wonder, and the film didn't reveal this, whether he too also took his own life.
I wondered that too.
Right.
Because when she crashes her car, that's just it's a scene, or her life just kind of resonates across the movie when he's like going back and rewatching footage of her life and trying to. And I thought it was interesting that she, I think, was the only person that he said remembered him, because there was a scene where she's a little kid and she's drawing him, and her parents are asking her, "Who's your friend?" "Oh, this is Will." So there's also that kind of unique bond there in ways that he feels connected to her, and he doesn't with other people. And so it's such a tragic story, and seeing the empty screen with the color bars, you know, after she dies, until there's a new person kind of ready to be loaded in.
Yeah, I just there's so many things about this that are just so great. This film reminded me, I know, Dave, you mentioned Defending Your Life. It definitely reminded me of that. It also reminded me of Strawberry Mansion, which is a really fantastic sci-fi film, because memories are on these VHS tapes. And so watching this, it kind of reminded me of that. But even though it reminded me also of Soul, you know, it's hard to not draw a comparison to that. I think it's doing something really unique here. Right. And I think this is a really special film about the beauty of life, of appreciating life, but particularly connection in those seemingly small moments, because I love how Will thinks that Emma hasn't really, you know, cared about the process, or she hasn't followed his instructions or done his exercises. And then he finds that she's been tracking moments that she loves all throughout the house. And he like finds them, and he's racing all throughout the house. And so many of the moments are not of people she's watched, although there are certainly those, but they're of the moments happening with Keo and with Will, which I think is so interesting.
Right. Yeah. There are moments where she was just living in the present and soaking everything up. And I think when he catches up to her and she asks him, her moment is she wants him to deliver this monologue that he gave when he was an actor, and he described the situation to her. So when we see him give this monologue, it's also just so indicative of her character to like want to live again in the moment and to have that connection and to do that. But also, I don't know, something about it was really it really hit me in the gut watching it all happen.
I think part of the way is because
beautiful monologue.
Yeah, part of the way is because the way he comes alive when he delivers it. And speaking of Winston Duke's, you know, abilities, talk about a different character.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is also really sad because she mentions, she's like, isn't that this, because she asks him earlier, like, what moment would you want to recreate? And when he's talking about his acting and his, you know, soliloquy and how great it was, she's like, oh, so that's the moment you'd want to recreate. And he's like, absolutely not, because then it would remind me that I was alive. And it's like, oh my God. Like, it's like, oh, so many gut punches in this film.
Yeah. I feel bad sometimes for him that he is so, I don't know what the word is, damaged by his existence.
And closed off and stymied and like everything.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that Amanda does, it becomes clear that she did kill herself, even if she had, maybe in the final moment, she would, you know, had a moment of fear or regret or whatever, but a different, what would we call them? Watcher, picker, observer. Yeah. The woman who, Geraldine Hughes, she plays another watcher, and she comes over to the house, and it turns out she was watching she had chosen Amanda's cousin, who was also her best friend, and Amanda's cousin found her suicide note, and Will realizes he had no idea. He either didn't want to see it, or he was busy doing other things. I think he probably just, you know, didn't want to see it, but It also can't be that easy when you're watching like 14 different people.
I know.
So,
how can you keep track of all those people?
Yeah. But I mean, she was also clearly
Yes,
his favorite,
yes.
right? So it's just, and he wonders that. He's like, why didn't I see that? It's like, oh, can't see everything, man.
No, you can't.
Anyway, this is a really beautiful movie.
It is. I love this so much, and I'm so glad you do too.
He said simply and declaratively.
Yes. But I'm so glad you guys love it too. It's so good.
You both have to know that this movie, done well like it is right up, is like so up my alley. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's like if this movie was crap, well, then it would be like, but yeah, done as well as this is done. Definitely going on the rewatch list.
Yep, it's well directed, incredibly well written, incredibly well acted. Yeah, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything.
Well, let's move on then to a film I know we're all excited to talk about, Fear Street Part 3, 1666, the final film in Lee Janiak's horror trilogy based on the R.L. Stine books.
Yeah.
Yep. It's got 666 in the title.
It does. Although it should really be 1666, 1994.
It really is two movies in one.
But it works. It's not like it's two different movies. How you're, not like Silent Hill, where it's before for those of you patrons. Yeah, patrons. We mentioned this earlier, and listeners who aren't patrons, we were talking about Silent Hill and how it's like you've got this one movie here, and then the second movie, like that's what I mean. But this movie works. Its two parts, I think, work together pretty effectively.
Yeah, I speak for myself and say I found this a really satisfying conclusion to these three movies. I liked the continued expansion of the world and the mythology around this town and the witch's curse and seeing how that all kind of came to be and also seeing the misconceptions around that and how history had created this alternate narrative about what had happened in this town and how the good family had this grip on the area. So I don't know. I just was very satisfied with how this all came together and really enjoyed it.
Agreed. So I'm just going to give a very brief summary, and guys, feel free to flesh it out, jump in. So if you've been following along in the Fear Street trilogy, we're finally getting to Sarah Fear, who is the witch, who is the cause of the curse of the town of Shadyside. And we're seeing her story and we're seeing her side of things, whereas she was not a witch and she is not the cause of the curse. Surprise, surprise. And it is the good family who are not so good. And Solomon Good, the descendant of the sheriff in the town, has made a pact with the devil, and he sacrifices people. He gives names to the devil, and the devil is the one who is possessing the killers to then go on a killing rampage. And what we find out is that Sarah and Hannah, and Sarah is portrayed by Dina from 1994, and Hannah is portrayed by Sam from 1994. And we see many familiar faces from the first film and the second film who are portraying these characters. And we find out that Sarah and Hannah are not only queer, portrayed by Dina and Sam, they're not only queer women in 1994, but they're queer women in 1666. And it was queer phobia and misogyny that led to Sarah and Hannah's persecution and to Sarah's death.
Yeah.
Yep.
Goddamn patriarchy.
Yeah, I know. But I don't know. I liked how that together in a way.
Me too.
It's like, oh no, the whole town has thought that the witch has brought this curse on, and it's really it's
the asshole man,
fucked up evil. The asshole evil dude who's been getting people's names carved on his little basement layer is causing these problems. Not the witch that everyone thinks. So I like how they came around.
Yeah, we should have probably, the three of us, put together that his last name's Good. That can't be good.
Yes. Good is evil. When they said that at least once in this movie.
Oh yeah, they
right?
do, and evil. They write it too in the mall.
Yeah. But Evan, my well-documented, I can pick every ending kind of thing. I mean, I guess I wouldn't say that this surprised me, but at the same time, I was like, oh. Yeah, I didn't think about it. It didn't So when, Solomon Good is like, no, Sarah, it's cool. We can, this is for the town and you can all be satanic with me. And she's like, fuck you. And so then he does her in. Yeah.
And it happens just like that. No.
Yeah.
Yes. That was a direct quote of that scene.
I was interested to see how she lost her hand, which is not at all how you thought it would be.
Right. Because the legend is that she cut off her own hand. And nope, absolutely not. It was cut off by that jagweed while they were fighting.
Jagweed.
Listen, I always love a Parks and Rec reference.
Yeah. I've never seen Parks and Rec, so there. I just thought that you came up with that on your own. So
no, it's a Mona Lisa reference from Parks and Rec.
One of the other things I appreciated about this is how every cast member from the other two movies is resident in the town, which is it called Union in 1666?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which makes perfect sense that it would be called Union, and then there's two towns after the evil split.
Yep.
But yeah, everybody shows up. So it was nice to see the girl who got her, head sliced open through the bread slicer.
Katie.
Right.
Nice to see her alive in 1666, and Gillian Jacobs' ancestor Constance, played by Sadie Sink, who played her as a young woman in 1978. So that was just cool.
Mm-hmm. And Cindy's there too. Yep.
Yeah, they're all there.
Not Alice. Alice is not there.
That's right. Alice isn't there, but the guy who gets the axe through the head, he's there.
Yep.
So that was all very cool. And then, so you find out that good is evil, and then they go back to 1994, and Dina and her brother are like, we gotta fucking take care of this shit, blah.
Although I don't think they said blah.
Yeah.
Right.
Something to the effect of what I said, except...
Right. They come back around to the mall again, which is a lot of fun. They concoct this plan to lure Good to the mall and to use all of the rogue killers to try to take him down.
And I love that all those killers are fighting each other. That is great.
Yeah. And I also love that Dina throws off the scent of her blood with CK1.
I know.
I saw that and I was like, this is now officially the greatest movie ever made.
I love that.
Yeah, and then we
too.
you get that nice Offspring musical interlude.
Yeah. That's right.
Except they don't say uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, cinco, seis.
Yeah.
Yes. That is unfortunate. But I do love that it comes back to the mall.
Yes.
And the mall is a central location. And then also seeing the kind of the similar imagery of that like grate in the mall where they drop down into the tunnels under the town is also the grate, from the summer camp. And, it's like we keep seeing that imagery of like someone on their back trying to kick open a grate to get escape. It just keeps coming back around over and over again.
Yeah. I also love that Dina uses R.L. Stein books strapped to her as a bulletproof vest.
Yeah.
Yes. That was a really nice touch. Yeah.
It was a nice Easter egg. Yeah. I also, going back to the 1666 part, so I do really feel like these are two completely separate movies and it didn't gel quite as well for me. Having said that, though, I didn't care. I love this series so much and I love these characters and I love this story that even though it felt very different stylistically, I was totally on board and I was totally okay with it. But I also... One thing I love, and then I want to talk about one other thing. Something I love is I love that each film has a different score, and it has like a very appropriate score for the 90s film, and the 1978 has like a slow piano score that feels kind of more Halloween-esque. And then the 1666 part has like strings that feel very medieval, and I really like that. Like it's just a subtle thing, but I really love that touch and that attention to detail. I also really like in this that we really see not only talk of possession and witchcraft, but how that fuels mob mentality and how the kind of persecution of Sarah and Hannah grows And there's a really interesting and compelling scene where Sarah's talking to Hannah and she's talking about how she doesn't fear the devil. She fears the neighbor who would accuse me and, the mother who would let her daughter hang and how she fears the townspeople. And it's just so sad, but so true because the fact that she's, different, that she's queer is what does her in and is ultimately her demise, which is just so tragic, but so, so true.
Yeah. One thing that really bothered me was the end of the 1666 portion where we get to the hanging. I mean, just because I think it was ultimately more disturbing that it was Dina, like in Sarah's body being hung. Like,
right.
I just feel like that was something kind of really disturbing of seeing like another person of color being, hanged and then like thinking about that aspect of it. But then also I feel like it just kind of went into graphic detail that I don't know. It didn't feel like it was necessary to me to communicate the point that we knew that Sarah was unjustly executed before, but we have to like watch the whole thing before we go to 1994. I didn't think that was necessary.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they showed us everything else. So I think I see what you mean with the, I think it would have been confusing directorially or it, like if because there is a different Sarah Fear, like the real one they call her in air quotes in the credits, but you only see her in little flashes. So if all of a sudden she was the one being hanged, you'd be like, wait, who the fuck is this? I would anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think they just didn't need to show the whole thing. I think we could have gotten to the point where we know that that's what's happening. And it's kind of like, okay, we're getting to, and then it's just like, it doesn't have to be shown in the level of graphic detail that they went through. Because we know what happens. Yeah. We know the story already. We know that she dies and we know that we're kicking forward to the future. So I don't feel like that was something that had to be as drawn out necessarily.
No, I agree with you, Evan, because it's also like I feel like I quote, we need to see her hand coming off because it happens very differently than what the narrative has been. So that's a case where we need to see something different, but we know that she hangs. So if that's the same, why do we need to see it? So I agree with you. So yeah, it is. Yeah, it definitely is uncomfortable too. The fact that because Sarah is not a woman of color, but because we're seeing Dina portray her. Yeah. And she is. Yeah, it is. Unsettling.
I don't know. I think it is unsettling. I think it just went to the sort of the overall horrifying nature of the crime and the evil of patriarchy, and and it's also very important that right before she's hanged, she tells Solomon Good, was that his name? Solomon?
That's his name.
She's like, I'm coming back for you, or whatever she says. She's much more eloquent than that, of course.
The truth will haunt you.
And I will never let you go.
I forget.
Right. And that's true. So
her curse is true.
Yeah. But I can see what you mean by the hanging, but I didn't feel the same way about it as you both did.
That is fair.
Yeah. But I also, I getting back to 1994, I appreciated that all of the characters in this part of 1994 who were still alive remained alive. They didn't kill anybody else off unexpectedly like they did at the end of the first one with, as I have mentioned several times through several episodes, head through the bread slicer.
Any opportunity to talk about Katie's demise.
I'll tell you, man, that I don't know why that. I mean, for one thing, it's just such a disgusting and well done practical effect.
Really
but at the same time, it's just like, man, they are killing a main character with like 10 minutes left in this movie. So,
very true.
Yeah. So I appreciated that everybody lived, and also that Ziggy is finally freed from the curse too. And did she know? I can't remember. Did she know that the good guy? She knew that the good guy sold her out, sold her sister out in 1978, but she didn't know he was the cause of the evil, right?
No,
she just thought he was like a gutless asshole.
Yes,
right. Okay.
No, she didn't know until Dina tells her. And then she like collapses on the ground because she's devastated. That's
right. It's all coming back to me now. I should watch these movies like more than like I watched this about a week and a half ago now. Because I was like, I'm watching it, damn it. So
Mm-hmm. I also dig in 1994 that they team up with Martin, who's the janitor at the mall, and he becomes a character that helps them out in their quest. I just was amused by him, the whole scene where he was making fun of the Discman for being really shitty and heavy and skipping all the time, and him trying to come up with an alternative to the Discman later in the movie. Like he's like selling things out of the trunk of his car.
He's great and You're the Worst.
Yes, his character's name is something else.
Oh, yeah, we can't. Well, no, we can say, but like, yeah.
I mean, we can.
I'm not going to. It's a ridiculous name. But anywho, but yeah, I really love each of these films together. I love them as a whole. I love how cohesive the story is all together. And I really, really love that Leigh Janiak had a queer couple at the heart of it, both kicking off the series and ending the series, but also in 1666, kicking that whole curse off. I really like that story, not the curse per se, but the story was about two queer women. Like I really love that. And it's, and it's a queer interracial couple in, the 90s. And yeah, I just love that. Makes my queer heart happy.
Yeah. I mean, to steal a phrase from our friends over at the Heodora podcast, their queer love saved the universe.
That is true. Both in She-Ra and in Fear Street.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but these films are just so enjoyable. Like I can't wait to watch them again.
Yeah, especially 1978. That was my favorite one of the three.
I think that's my favorite too, although I really like 1666, the first half. I really like the folk horror element of it.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, but 1978, I think from start to finish for me is also kind of the most fun because it's so really just relentlessly paced.
Yeah. And I also like that I think we should or I'll point this out. I think it's important that these movies were written as a trilogy and they were written it wasn't like they were like, oh, the first one's successful. Now what are we going to do? It was like, no, it was always going to be this story told this way. And there is a dumb cliffhanger we forgot to mention.
Well, I don't think it's dumb, but it's fine.
The spell book is, still at the crime scene and someone else snatches it. So leaving room for a potential sequel. Yeah.
Right. Why is the book at the crime scene still? That's what I'd like to know. And also, if it's at the crime scene, why isn't anybody guarding the crime scene? I know that, the Sheriff Good's brother, the mayor, was run over, so maybe he didn't appoint somebody new to be sheriff. Because that's one of the things. The entire Good family is, you see two of them get decimated at the end of 1666 in what would be their present 1994. But you also get the feeling that the rest of them, wherever they are going to go by the wayside. So,
but crime scenes aren't always guarded. They're sometimes left unattended.
Right. Once they're finished, yes. But this one is like an open air. It's not like
that is true.
It would take a lot of effort to get there, but you could still. Technically, it's open air, so there should probably be somebody guarding an entrance or whatever.
No, you're very right. Unless the person guarding the entrance is the person who stole it. What?
That could be.
I just I didn't necessarily think like, oh, they're going to have another one. Although, certainly they could because these are incredibly popular. But I got just more of a sense like, oh, we're going to pay homage to other horror films. And so that's why we're like, we're going to end on a cliffhanger, even though there may never really be a follow-up to that cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of hope there will be, but I
do
fear
you?
that they wouldn't. Well, sure. I mean, these are a lot of fun. I mean, I don't think that what are the chances that they would be as good,
Yeah, if Leigh Janiak's back, I'm in.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing the Fear Street spun out into a serialized show, kind of like in the vein of like American Horror Story, where like each season is some, plot of a Fear Street that they kind of spun out into a season long story. That'd be good. I could see that being fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I thought about that too because I saw an article that talked about how these should have been a TV series rather than movies, which I completely disagree with. And I think they should be movies and I love that they're movies. But I kind of like this complete story. And I like the fact that they were intended as 3 movies. Like it was set out right from the start, like, nope, this is the story we're going to tell. This is the arc. And here we are. And so I hear what you're saying, and that could be fun. But I really just like kind of like, nope, we're done. This is the story we're telling. This is how we did it. And I just, yeah, I like that.
Although I feel like if there were a sequel, it'd be like Fear Street Part 4, 2003. And then Dean would be like, so back in 1994, and so she'd have to be in it in some way. I don't know. Instead of it being a whole new thing. But,
maybe.
All speculation at this point.
Very, very true. But one thing I think we can say that's not speculation is that these are so much fun. And just I know you guys did too, but I just got so much enjoyment watching these, and it was just a sheer delight to experience
I really
them.
did too.
Yeah, they're just so entertaining, so fun, so well done.
Right. And week to week, I was excited to watch the next one, which really said something for like the amount of the number of movies and TV shows that I'm sure we all watch to actually be legitimately excited for
That's
something.
True.
The next entry, it's not terribly usual.
Would you like to know how many movies I'm excited by each week we do the show?
0.
So, I mean, there are movies I want to see more than others, but am I excited to see Settlers? Reference to last week.
Settlers. Well, I was excited to see Settlers. I just want to say that. But
I know. I was too, actually. That's why it was such a bummer.
It was. You're so right. But no, it's funny because I remember in the last episode, Dave, you were like, I'm going to watch 1666 right now. And the only reason I didn't is because I fell asleep because I was so tired, but I was going to watch it right away because I was like, I need to know what happens next.
Yeah, I stayed up and watched it.
Nice.
So.
Yeah, but these are just great. And I love that. I don't know about you, but I really cared about the characters too, which just, of course, makes it so much better. So everything is just working, and that the acting is good. The characters are, compelling, and you care about them, and the pacing is great. The cinematography works. The soundtrack works. Like, just everything is just working together. And these are just a sheer delight.
Yeah, totally.
All right. I feel like I think I said this in the last 2 Fear Streets we talked about. I'm like, I could keep going, but it would just really much be rehashing the same things about how these are so awesome. So let's move on to our final film of the show, Disney's Jungle Cruise. So
yeah. Or Nature Cruise.
Or Nature Cruise, as Dave like to call it. So Jungle Cruise is directed by Jaume Collet-Serra, or Jaume Collet-Serra, as we've heard both pronunciations. Not sure which one is correct. And this is based on the Disney Parks theme park ride Jungle Cruise at Disney World, Disneyland, and other Disneys around the globe. And it stars Dwayne Johnson, Emily Blunt, Jesse Plemons,
Edgar
Ramirez, Jack Whitehall, and Paul Giamatti in a very small role.
Chewing all the scenery he possibly can get his hands on.
Yes, very much so. So Emily Blunt plays a botanist, Dr. Lily, and her brother is McGregor, and she wants to find these tears of the moon, these special petals that can heal anything. And this is set during World War I, and she wants to revolutionize medicine. So she wants to go to the Amazon to find these special petals. And Dwayne Johnson is a skipper of a jungle cruise, hence the titular Jungle Cruise. And he is the one who takes them on the trek, the voyage to get to them. And Jesse Plemons is a villain, and
he's German.
He is, yes.
Also chewing scenery.
Yeah, talk about scenery chewing. Good Lord.
Yeah.
And then there's the mythology behind the tears. We find out that there was a conquistador who was played by Edgar Ramirez and his crew of people that set on a quest to find these things, and they fell ill in the jungle, and this tribe nursed them back to health, but they got impatient, and so they killed the tribe and tried to take the petals for themselves, but then they were cursed.
Yes,
and
to never leave.
They've been stuck in this crazy curse where they they can never leave sight of the river. Otherwise they get, I don't know, they turn to stone basically.
Well, no, the jungle grabs them and pulls them back, unless what Dwayne Johnson does later is he traps them in a cave so that then they are essentially tortured. Although I don't remember how they got back to the river. Was that Jesse Plemons? I don't remember.
It was Jesse Plemons.
Yeah, Jesse Plemons.
Thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and write and tell you a few of the notes that I wrote down here. This is the third thing I wrote. Surprising number of stabbings for a kids movie.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stabbing. Stabby.
Yep.
Yeah, all of it bloodless, but some of it quite graphic nonetheless.
Yep.
One thing that did make me laugh, not a lot of things in this movie made me laugh, but one thing that did was when the brother at the beginning of the movie was talking about how they could cure all the kinds of fevers, and he finally runs out of fevers, and he's like, fever.
That was funny.
Yeah. But I had a lot of problems with Jungle Cruise, but I don't know if somebody else wants to take the lead on whether they loved it or hated it. So,
well, I just want to say about the humor, since you brought up what made you laugh. I will say, since it's based on the rides, and for those who don't know, I am a diehard, hardcore Disney World fan. I love that there are so many references to the original ride, which is actually interestingly and disturbingly being updated. There are racist elements being removed from the ride, and it's also being updated with characters that will tie into the movie. So, yeah. So it's kind of like, yay, racism is going away. Oh, but merchandising. Okay. But hey, it's Disney. What do you expect? It's what you get. But what I do love is that the ride is known for the skipper, who is played by a Disney cast member, telling really horrendously bad puns. And like, that's what it's known for. That's why it is many people's, I don't want to say a favorite ride, although for some people I'm sure it is, but that's why a lot of people love that ride, because it's so silly and there's so many puns. And I love that Dwayne Johnson as Frank does the puns, and especially the backside of water, which is the most famous of these silly jokes of that ride. So I love those kind of little touches that are, a nod to the fans of the ride.
Yeah. Well, as you both know, I appreciate a good pun. So I was usually laughing through all of the bad jokes between two can play. The hard to swallow joke, the orange juice factory,
taking it for granted.
Couldn't concentrate. Yeah,
a little bit anachronistic. Did they have orange juice from concentrate in 1916? I don't know. So,
good question.
Good question, me. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm gonna point out some things that I just, since I so rarely talk about the notes I take, because I don't usually take notes, I'm just going to read a few to you here. Yep. This score by James Newton Howard is really ripping off John Williams' Raiders of the Lost Ark. Fresh hell, says the brother, right out of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Credits popping up rivals 13-minute intro to Raising Arizona.
Oh.
Why can she not swim? What is this stupid and contrived story trait?
Hey, not everybody can swim, says someone who doesn't swim very well.
Right, but this is a movie, so
I'm just being contrarian. It's usually your role, but I'm filling it right now.
Yeah, thank you. These stunts and set pieces are surprisingly low energy. That's
a really great observation that I very much agree with.
I agree with that too. And it's interesting because they set a weird pace. Like it feels like for the maybe like the first half hour of the movie, it's like set piece to set piece to set piece. Like it's just really rapidly paced. But you're right. It feels shockingly low energy for such hijinks. Like, and there are hijinks.
There's lots of hijinks.
Like a submarine blows up a huge like portion of this like town where Paul Giamatti is like the ship czar or whatever. It's just like there's just massive explosions and broken things all over the place, but it feels shockingly low energy.
Yeah,
definitely agree.
Oh, I also forgot to mention how they rip off the Graham Greene character from Maverick, how he's playing like a stereotypical Native American in that, and then he turns out he's just a regular guy, and they do that in this too. Which, I mean, lots of movies have had that gag, but it was kind of disappointing to see it. It felt so unoriginal. And then the movie ultimately becomes Curse of the Black Pearl at the end, which is really surprising that What's-Their-Faces didn't get screenplay credit because they sure should have.
It also is very much evocative of the African Queen, which that actually was.
Yes.
That was actually an intentional inspiration for. So, but you're right that it is very much pulling from / ripping off many other films.
I mean, he's essentially wearing Humphrey Bogart's hat.
Yeah.
So
and it's a brother sister who are going, with him, and they're a brother sister. Yeah. So very similar.
Yeah. I was going to say it does lift from a lot of properties, and as an Indiana Jones fan, that was definitely one of the ones that came to the surface as feeling like very much like Indiana Jones, very much like Pirates of the Caribbean, The Mummy. I mean,
Tomb Raider.
The Mummy is like a big one. We've got we've got the Emily Blunt character who's kind of like the Rachel Weisz, and then we've got like the brother who's not a drunkard, but he's basically like I don't know, he's like.
Yeah, he's kind of like the character in The Mummy, similarly.
Yeah, he's like...
Also, but like, is it Tomb Raider also in like the fact that the city kind of drains of water? That literally is in one of the Tomb Raider games. I'm like, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I didn't love how they're just all throwing up at one point. It's like, even the CGI cat, CGI vomits. And it's like, come on.
There's so much CGI in this, and I know, like,
and it's not very good.
No, well, that's the thing. It's funny. So, in some films, CGI doesn't bother me at all, and it's very kind of cartoonish here. And I don't know if that's intentional, but there's so many other facets of the film that don't work that it makes it stand out even more. So, it's
I think that's what it is.
So, I will say that this is a weird thing. The film made me weirdly emotional during the scene where Frank...
I know where you're going.
Do you?
Maybe I do.
Maybe you do. You might. Where Frank and Lily are talking, and he reveals that he's also, or she learns because he's like fallen from this massive height and he survived. And how the hell did he survive? And she finds out that he's like 400 years old because he was also traveling with the conquistadors and helping to get the Tears of the Moon, trying to get to the Tears of the Moon to help save Edgar Ramirez's daughter. And, and it's very clear that they've been like, they have this kind of, bickering banter, and there's some kind of flirtation going on. And then, Frank says, he's like, as soon as we get this, I'm done. I'm resting. And she's like, wait, what? She's like, but there's so many things I could show you. We could, and she's like basically saying like we could have a life together. And he's like, that would be really great, but no, I'm done. And I was like so emotional. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that actually worked for me too.
Yeah.
Especially considering I think otherwise in this and in other things, The Rock is as charismatic as he is, he's not much of a romantic lead.
No, but he was really great in that scene. And then the other thing I will say, and maybe this is the scene you thought I was going to mention, but the other scene that I like, although I also have a problem with it, and we'll get to that, but I also like the scene that McGregor reveals that he's gay or queer.
Right.
And, and he's talking about, because Frank is like, why
It'll never
are you...
be a match or whatever.
Right,
what does he say?
Yeah, so Frank had asked like, he's complaining about Lily, about how she's, hard-headed and she's, stubborn and determined and all of these awesome things actually. And he asks why McGregor travels with her, because he clearly is very, timid and doesn't want to be traveling around. And he says that he would follow her anywhere because when his whole family turned his back on him and he's alluding to the fact that he's, gay, and that he couldn't take any marriage offers because he has his interests lie elsewhere, I think is what he says. And
yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And I love that McGregor is the one who reveals his identity. But at the same time, it's a little frustrating because it feels like it's just there to show that Lily is a really good person because she stood by him. So I feel kind of conflicted. I'm like, yay, gay character. Yay, we need more queer characters. And then I'm also like, oh, but I kind of wanted to talk more about that. But yeah, so I felt kind of conflicted about it.
Yeah. I don't know that it shows that she's such a good person. I think I can't believe I'm going to say this about this movie, but it sort of fits with the character as she's written. I can't believe I gave this movie a screenplay compliment.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I mean,
yeah,
mild praise, but praise nonetheless.
Hey, those are two scenes that I think work. I think we can praise it where it works. And I think those are two scenes that do surprisingly work. Like, I had very emotional reactions. Having said that, there are a lot of other issues with this film.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot that doesn't work here. And honestly, I agree with you that one scene between The Rock and Emily Blunt is a good scene, but I really hated how they try to shoehorn a romance into this movie where it just didn't feel like it belonged, both from a narrative perspective and from a chemistry perspective. It just,
I agree with
that. I love
that.
The Rock, and he's very funny, but he's just not. I just don't buy him as romantic. He doesn't put out.
He doesn't put out
in a way that
he doesn't put out. He doesn't put out those romance vibes.
No, he just doesn't, and that's fine. And I think he's very funny and very charismatic, but it does not work in this for me. And it was such an annoying thing every time we got to that kind of flirtation, or even when they're kissing toward the end. I just did not.
Yeah,
I was not a fan.
The underwater buddy breathing / she turns it into a kiss thing. I was just kind of like, is this really where we're going? Come on.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's frustrating about that too? It's frustrating because it perpetuates the notion that men and women cannot be platonic friends. And it would have been really nice if she still had said the same thing to him about driving him around, England and showing him around and having a life with him. It still could have worked that way. It just didn't need to necessarily be romantic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And another thing for me is we talked extensively about how this movie lifts from so many other movies. The one inspired part that I thought, or the one part that I thought was interesting, and I made a note, holy exposition Batman, was when he's recounting his whole backstory of being with the Conquistadors, and we've got instrumental Metallica, Nothing Else Matters.
Nothing Else Matters twice. Second time it's in the movie.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That to me felt like the most inspired thing, and I was like, why aren't we doing more interesting storytelling methods? We could pull back on the exposition, and we could let's just do something way more interesting. It was way more compellingly edited or told in that few minute sequence than the rest of the movie. And I would have liked to see more of that movie, because I think it would have been much more interesting to take different editing, writing, storytelling approach for that. And also, I think the idea that Edgar Ramirez is there for his daughter, I think was a really fascinating concept that they just completely threw away.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, he's not the typical conquistador in that he's there for fortune and glory and money and power. It's like he's there to get this thing to save his daughter's life.
Right.
And I feel like that could have been a more compelling thing to lean into for him as the villain, because let's be honest, he's, I think, a way more interesting villain in this than the Jesse Plemons character.
Oh my God, yes.
He's such an annoying dud of a villain that you could easily cut out of the movie.
You know what's so, oh my God, there's so many things I want to respond to. Evan, that was great. You had so many great things you just said.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So Jesse Plemons, I usually love. He is so great. He's really great. I mean, obviously in Friday Night Lights, he's amazing. But he's really creepy as fuck as the villain in Breaking Bad. And so I'm on board with Jesse Plemons as a hero or a villain or somewhere in between. But yeah, dud is the perfect word. It is just awful. It does not work on any level. And Jesse Plemons, I expect better from him. And maybe it was the material and he just did his best. But yeah, it was not good. So I agree with you that Edgar Ramirez is a much more interesting villain. I think where my frustration lies with this film, I mean, the writing is just not good. It's not good. And that's really what it comes down to. But the film seems like it's attempting to make some kind of commentary on colonialism and fascism and indigenous rights, which are all great. And that's something that story that Frank is telling touches on, because, you know, the indigenous people, they took them in and they gave them Tears of the Moon when they were dying, and that resuscitated them, you know, and then Edgar Ramirez, you know, turned on them and killed them because they wouldn't give him the Tears of the Moon for his daughter. So it is touching on, it's trying to touch on this, or it's trying to make a commentary, but it never actually does, and it never comes together, and it's just really frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah. You know what was really frustrating, though, is that two of the people who wrote Bad Santa wrote this. and I was just hoping for some more, you know, I don't know if blue humor is the right way to put it, but I don't know. How do you go from Bad Santa to Jungle Cruise? I mean, I guess a job is a job, but still.
Sure. I mean, I'm all for people doing different genres.
Oh, I am
going,
too.
You know what I mean? Like
too.
going against type of what they've done before. Because, you know, I mean, because that's the thing. Because, you know, Koyet Sarah as a director, he does horror usually. So, you know, or action.
Right.
And so to see this, I was really excited for this, because I was like, ooh, is there going to be some kind of like really intense action, or maybe even some subtle horror elements or something, you know? But yeah.
Oh, for sure. It's like when Eli Roth made that kids movie. I was like, what? Eli Roth made a kids
the
movie?
Clock in the House, or
right.
The House with the Clock in its Walls. That's it.
That's the one.
Yeah.
But I think that Jungle Cruise suffers from what a lot of the Disney theme park movies suffer from, which is, aside from the fact that they suck.
Not the first Pirates, though. That one's a great film.
No. That's I don't know if I'd say great. I'd say it's really enjoyable and I like it a lot. And it was such a surprise that it wasn't dog shit, that it was like really a joy. But when you consider the other 4 movies in that series are just so awful, especially the third one, because it's like nearly 3 hours long, and like, this is all you're going to do with Keith Richards? I mean, come on. But they've always got just too much stuff going on in these movies.
Yeah.
So it's like you were saying, you got a great villain in Edgar Ramirez. So why don't we just cut the whole Jesse Plemons thing?
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to, you know, Germans are bad. Yeah, we know what they did in this war and the next one. So yes, we know.
It's the lazy man's villain.
Yeah, it really is. But the other thing is, you know, Edgar Ramirez is quite a fine actor. So to see him just kind of like be covered in digital snakes and say things that, you know, I would need subtitles for. You know, I did appreciate that there was one guy made out of honey, though. That I did appreciate. But otherwise,
oh yeah,
it was really well done, actually.
That was like the one thing I'm like, this one they got right, because I'm just like, I knew he was honey. I knew that was honeycomb. I knew like it all worked. It all made sense in sort of like the way his body would fall apart when it was attacked.
And Lily has like honey on her hand.
Right.
It's great. It actually works really well.
It's like, that's the thing they took the most care with. You know, it's like the characters, fuck them. But the honey guy, absolutely.
We're nailing that.
Yeah. So, and it was just, you know, Edgar Ramirez, it's a terrible movie, but Edgar Ramirez and Emily Blunt are in The Girl on the Train. And they have several scenes together, and it just would have been nice to like maybe see them do something where they weren't like trying to kill each other in this and have no dialogue together.
That's totally fair. Speaking of people in other movies, Veronica Falcone is Trader Sam in this, which is a gender reversal of the original Trader Sam from The Ride. But she is great in the Forever Purge that we just watched. And it's a really small role, but she's really, really good in it. And so I would have liked to have seen more of her in this too. But alas, no.
I mean, it's funny. It's you can see Disney trying to be progressive or progressive-ish with this movie, but at the same time falling back on a bunch of tropes that are kind of old and tired. And it's like, well, yay, there's a gay character, but I mean, what else are you giving me? You're giving me fucking Edgar Ramirez as a bunch of snakes? Come on, you know?
Well, also, I don't know if you guys were bothered by this, but something we haven't even talked about. I was bothered that The Rock, that Dwayne Johnson is kind of standing in for a Spanish or Latinx person. And I'm like, he is not of those identities. And like, it kind of goes to the like, a person of color is a person of color, which is incredibly frustrating and offensive. So I was kind of like,
I just took that. Now, I'm probably giving the movie way too much credit, but because he had been alive 400 years and he hadn't been trapped in the jungle like the other guys had been, I just kind of thought, oh, so he kind of just adapted with the times and the this and the that and the, So when he said that, his name was Spanish in origin, I was just surprised because having been on the Jungle Cruise ride a million times, I was just like, oh, he's just the skipper, whatever. It didn't occur to me that he was going to be part of the fucking, Aguirre's crew,
Right.
So,
well, no, that's what I mean. Like I would, right. If he was just the skipper, like that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the fact that he was part of Aguirre's crew. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's why I was like, wait,
no.
What?
I do. And that's what I guess I didn't explain very well. I just sort of thought, he's been alive for 400 years and he's been stuck there. He's learned all of these other, he's all encompassing now. So I don't want to say it's like he's not Spanish anymore or like he's not, but
he's not Spanish in real life. That's what I'm saying.
No, I know. I know what you're saying. I know what
you're saying too. And I get it. And you're right. But I'm also like, but the fact that I know his ethnicity in real life, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That feels weird.
I don't know. It's just this movie is just so, it's just such a mess on so many different levels. So.
Yeah. It's muddled, to use your word, Dave.
Yeah. There you go.
Bringing it back around.
Thank you.
On Jungle Cruise.
It's a mess. That's it.
I will say, I feel like I say this every episode. I feel like I just am a broken record about it. For me, it so often just comes down to the writing. If you have shitty writing, it's not going to be a good film. You need better writing. Focus on the writing, people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's do a recap. So 9 Days is going to be in theaters. And I think we'd all say see it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yay, it's so good. Fear Street Part 3, 1666 is streaming on Netflix. And I think that also we would say all see it, recommend it.
For sure.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah. If you've seen the others, you definitely need to see the conclusion of this trilogy.
Oh my God, you do. It's so good. And if you haven't seen the others, go see them. They're great. And Disney's Jungle Cruise, which is in theaters and also on Disney Plus, their premiere access. You can rent it at home, but you have to pay extra. Would we say see it?
No.
I would also, this pains me to say, I would also say skip it. But you know what you can do? If you are a diehard Disney fan, watch any live streams of the Jungle Cruise ride. Just watch that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yes, because I'm a nerd who watches live streams of Disney rides.
Hey, I'm not going to tell you what I did over the weekend entirely, but I did watch a guy mow a lawn on YouTube. So there's that.
All right. Wow.
Oh, all righty then.
We lead exciting lives.
Yep.
All right. We want to give a huge thank you to our amazing editor, Otto Clammer. Otto, thank you for making us sound great week after week.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. We are at all the platforms. You can find us on our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find us all over social media. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd and TikTok. And if you want to reach out to us and tell us what you think, if you loved Jungle Cruise or if you also loved Fear Street in 9 Days and you want to share with us, reach out. Email us at spoilerpiece@gmail.com or you can call us
at 862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail message, text us, let us know what you think. Reach out on social media. We love hearing from you. And if you like
we do.
And if you like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. You can also leave us a rating over at Apple Podcasts. That really helps us out tremendously, gets the word out about the show. And if you really, really like the show, consider joining our Patreon. Every week we do bonus episodes for our $5 a month patrons. this week we had our video game movie poll, and we had the winner, which was Silent Hill. That was a great conversation. So if you are a patron, go check it out. And if you're not, consider joining. And we also want to thank our amazing patrons.
Yeah, we want to say a huge thank you to William Scahan, Sean Pensionar, Christopher Jensen, Bob Chipman, Charlie Nash, Davida Margolin, Zach Pigeon, Chris Wilkinson, Shona Glasgow, Shelley McCaskill, Mike, Lord of the Sith, Deirdre Crimmins, and Shauna Harris.
Thank you, patrons.
Thanks, patrons.
Thanks, patrons.
And thank you, listeners. We really appreciate you tuning in and listening to us talk about movies, which we love doing. My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I'm a member of Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionS World and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
My name is Dave Riedel. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
And my name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.